Management at the University of Bristol. It stands for Action Research and Critical Inquiry in Organisation, and it's definitely pronounced ARCIO and not ARCIO. So let's just put it right from the start. It's not Lurkio, unfortunately. No. This morning we're going to look at the critical part of critical inquiry, and then this afternoon we're actually going to, those of you who can stay for the afternoon, going to do a form of action research, action inquiry, using writing as our method, which Sue Porter, who's at the back, and myself will be facilitating. So this is the first event before we've even launched the centre. So I always like to do it that way around. We will be launching the centre officially on the 1st of February, and you will obviously receive an invitation to come to that. I have got the start of a mailing list. If you want to be on the ARCIO mailing list, it's all getting very exciting now, and we're in negotiations about a website with Glenn over here, so it's starting to feel real. So if you do want to be on the mailing list, perhaps you'd just like to leave me your name. So, very pleased to welcome members of the Department of Management, obviously, but also PhD students who are in the Department of Management, PhD students who aren't in the Department of Management, former students, people from the CARP part of ARCIO. CARP was a Centre for Action Research and Professional Practice at the University of Bath, which is strongly affiliated with ARCIO, and also people from other universities, which is great delight to see people from other academic institutions. There will be, I hope, somebody from UWE, I hope, because he's co-presenting with me at 11:30, so let's hope he manages to get back in time. So, right, the first event then, Organising Christmas. I've stolen the title from Phil. Just talking about it, when you start to talk about Christmas and people sort of raise a wry eyebrow. And I think when you, my paper and Phil's paper, both had an airing last year at a two-day event that Phil ran at Warwick Business School. And I think, according to his co-organiser, when the call went round, people thought it was a joke. So several people didn't submit anything because they just thought it was, you know, the boys having a laugh. But it's, I think it's a very interesting way into thinking critically about organisations. So this morning we'll be doing the critical management theoretical type approach to it, and then in the afternoon we'll use it as a symbolic lens for thinking about our experience of organisation. And Phil's actually got money to research this, which he may even tell you about. I mean, you can get money for this sort of thing, apparently, it's true. Yeah. So, who better, really, to be the very first ARCIO speaker, something for your CV, the inaugural stage.
You didn't tell me any of this,
Phil said, don't show them this, but he is one of the people that you would look to if you were interested in art and aesthetics at work. So I will have recommended this to several people in the room already. And this, I thought, was your latest venture into print, but apparently not.
No, there's another one.
Just
it's edited.
But he has made a huge contribution to critical management as a field of study, so we're absolutely delighted that he's here. He's also probably the only person I can introduce and say, as I was saying to Phil Hancock down a salt mine in Poland. There aren't that many people I've had a conversation with down salt mines.
Where did you get a mobile phone signal?
We didn't, did we? No,
we did. Did we? What was weird about it?
And it was my 20th wedding anniversary, which I spent with Phil down a salt mine. Anyway, the other person I spent it with, let's hope, will turn up. So I won't try your patience any longer, but we are very, very pleased that Phil was able to come and be our first speaker. So let me hand you over to Dr. Phil Hancock.
Thank you very much. Thank you, very humbled by that introduction. Thank you, really nice. Yes, I'm here to speak to you about Christmas. Let me just get the overheads up, what I think. Let me just do a little bit of background to this. Anne mentions that we had a seminar, a symposium last year entitled Organising Christmas. Now, Organising Christmas, aka the importance of lists and checking them twice. I'm not sure the subtitle lends anything to the presentation, but I just like it. Just for having worked with Paul de Gay, the importance of sort of the bureaucratic mindset sort of really does resonate with some of this work. Last year we organised a symposium, 2-day symposium, organising Christmas, with, I think it's with Alf Wren, Professor Alf Wren from Finland. What struck me as interesting about Christmas, apart from a whole range of biographical material that I could draw upon, was that while there was an immense amount of research, reflection, writing on the topic of Christmas within social history, perhaps not unsurprisingly, cultural studies and areas of sociology, there had been very, very little attention paid to it in organisation and management studies, which for me seemed rather strange. Because when you read the social history and the sociological literature, large proportions of that were dedicated to understanding the economic, organisational context of Christmas and the ways in which the manifestation of Christmas as a modern phenomenon is deeply embedded within the production, reproduction, distribution of consumer goods, etc., etc., the organisation of labour, whatever. So it seemed a real missed opportunity. It was also a great way to annoy my colleagues, because they thought we should be doing very serious things at Warwick and we should all be, pursuing intense research agendas. And I said, well, look, let's do something about Christmas. And as Anne pointed out, most of them at best gave me a wry smile. Some of them still, I think, refused to talk to me. So the idea of Christmas is, for me, something that we can explore as organisation management scholars, and I think it's something that maybe of some use to us. There's a few caveats I just want to build in before I go any further. The first one is when I talk about Christmas, I'm largely talking about the celebration of Christmas, okay? So I'm not really so interested in the spiritual dimension. Historically, if one looks at Christmas through the eyes of most academics, you will see, and indeed even religious academics, there is a reasonable consensus that Christmas has actually very little to do with Christianity, as most people celebrate it, engage with it. I do appreciate, there's always one, isn't there? There's always one. I do appreciate that for some people it has immense spiritual, personal significance, and I certainly wouldn't want to belittle it, but that's not so much what I'm interested in here. Secondly, I'm interested in what I'm calling the Anglo-American experience of Christmas. Christmas is celebrated, the celebration of Christmas, whatever it may mean to people, is celebrated in different ways in different parts of the globe. But part of my argument here is that a particular form of Christmas celebration has become hegemonic, and that is one that's grounded within a range of traditions that originate primarily in Northern Europe and England, specifically England, which were then exported to America, which were then re-exported back to parts of Europe and eventually the rest of the world. And thirdly, I mean, Anne talks about being critical. I have to say, and I didn't really know the context of the presentation, she got very quiet. While I have written in areas that might be described as critical management studies, I wouldn't describe this as a particularly critical presentation. There is no critical or theoretical edifice which provides the foundations for what I'm doing here. It's much more, perhaps, somewhat evangelical, saying, look, this stuff's interesting, let's think about it in different ways, from different perspectives, drawing upon different traditions within organisation, management studies, and critical social theory more generally. So as I say, empirical with a touch of evangelicism built in. A little bit more about why I'm interested in Christmas, and perhaps there's some theoretical basis to all of this, I suppose. Let's see if this works. Yes, it is. A quote, one of my more favourite quotes from the Frankfurt School scholar Theodor Adorno. And has a thing that I always try to draw Adorno into anything I talk about, and with Christmas it was particularly difficult, but then going back through a few searches and looking back into prisms, found this reasonably, well, not well-known quote, where Adorno is referring to his erstwhile colleague and inspiration, Walter Benjamin. And he writes about Benjamin, to be near him was like being a child at the moment where the door to the room where the Christmas presents lie waiting opens a crack and the abundance overwhelms the eye to the point of tears, more moving and more assured than any brightness that greets a child when he is invited to enter. It strikes me as really interesting on two levels. The first one is, to me, it encapsulates what, to use sort of Adorno-esque parlance, might be described as the negative dialectic of Christmas. Christmas as a celebration, as a cultural experience, offers so much, and yet, as many of us will probably know who do celebrate it, usually fails to deliver. And this is what Adorno was talking about when he referred to Benjamin, that Benjamin's work offered so much, and yet ultimately, politically, in Adorno's view, failed to deliver. It's the anticipation, the build-up, the hope that Christmas brings, which is so cruelly, for most of us, shattered at some point during the actual event, but which still invites us back time and time again to go through the whole process, which for me is partly so interesting. I mean that, you know, both at a social, cultural and an organisational level. But it also suggests to me the significance. One of the criticisms I've had when I've talked about this with people is it's very ethnocentric, very, very culturally restricted. You know, talk about Christmas, isn't this almost an act of imperialism? And while I will make an argument that Christmas is truly, as a leading Sikh religious leader in Leicester described it last year, the true mega global festival. Sorry, global mega, right, a global mega festival. What struck me about this was lovely was that here we have Theodor Adorno, a Jewish German intellectual, referring to Walter Benjamin, another Jewish German intellectual, you know, who in many ways existed, both of them, in a particularly rarefied culture that you would think would have nothing to do with Christmas, identifying so closely with the experience of Christmas that so many of us have, or I would argue most of us have. You know, to me, it's what, I mean, we could talk about the Germanic roots of Christmas and how important that is, but it just seems to be wonderful that Adorno understood Christmas as such a significant reference point in relation to another man who meant so much to him. So it's both the dialectic, but also the cultural pervasiveness that I think is really interesting about finding that observation. The other thing I want to share is a couple of video clips of my favourite video about Christmas. And it's often in the lights for this, sorry. This is the other, I think, perhaps most important tension or contradiction that we both experience, and which in many ways have shaped the experience of the modern Christmas, to say in more broad terms, and indeed organisationally. This is a clip from Patrick Stewart's version of A Christmas Carol. I'm just going to, hopefully, I should have checked the sound on this. Is this going to run? It will run, because I ran it a minute ago.
A Merry Christmas, Uncle! God save you! Humbug. Christmas a humbug, Uncle? You don't mean it. I do mean it, sir. Merry Christmas. What reason have you to be merry? What right have you to be merry? You're poor. Well, what right have you to be miserable then? You're rich. Merry Christmas! Damn you, Merry Christmas. Christmas time to you. A time for paying bills without money. A time for finding yourself a year older and not an hour richer. A time for balancing your books and finding every item dead against you. If I had my way, every idiot who went around with Merry Christmas on his lips would be more with his own pudding, better than a steak of olive to his heart. Uncle, nephew, you keep Christmas in your way. I'll keep it in mine. But you don't keep it. Well, if we leave it alone, then. I still say Merry Christmas. That's all you do, sir. Much good it does you. Much good it never do you. I dare say there are many things I want to know good from which haven't made me a penny profit. Christmas amongst them. You see, Uncle, I always think Christmas is a time for good and a time for profit. A kind, forgiving time. A time when men and women can think of others. I was never put an extra penny in my pocket, but I believe Christmas has done me good and will do me good. So I still say Merry Christmas, Uncle.
Okay. I'll sort of unlock the volume in a moment. That clip, for me, is perhaps, again, one of the most interesting in that particular novella. Because, I don't know if you're aware of this, but there are certainly many scholars that argue, and I think it's a very contestable proposition, but there is no more defining text of the modern Christmas that we experience today that we're used to than Dickens' A Christmas Carol. It was reprinted multiple times. He toured both the UK and the United States. So it seemed very much as a canonical text when it comes to the explication and construction of the modern idea of Christmas. But that keeps a wonderful one, because it seems to me that the suggestion is quite clear. What Dickens is getting at, and I think what many of us have sought to internalise, is the idea that Christmas and the celebration of Christmas is somehow antithetical to the pursuit of profit, to the organisation of economic and other rational pursuits. It's somehow not necessarily spiritual in a Christian sense, but it's somehow about transcending the everyday materiality of our lives. And in a sense harks back to a more hedonistic, generous age. It's somehow a more spontaneous and human way of living that is recaptured for a limited period of time. And as you read through the book, this is very much what you get. This juxtaposition of generosity and joy, of celebration and philanthropy, which stand against sort of the qualification and objectification of modern society. So Christmas again sets up, it seems to me, this what will become, as the 20th century develops, this particular interesting contradiction. But to say, a contradiction between, on the one hand, this idealisation of Christmas and the brute reality of the way in which most of us experience it. And in a sense, what I want to argue is that most of us experience Christmas as a profoundly organisational period of time, an organisational period of festivity. That organisation, and here I'm kind of using the Martin Parker sense of organisation as referring to, I think he describes it, any sort of patterning, a durable set of relations between people and things, or in my view, as a verb, the process of establishing those patterns and enduring relationships. That very sort of, I always feel romantic, like it's something with arrows going in it somewhere or the other, but that I tried to get into a 4x4 matrix, but it just didn't work. I had real problems with that one. That analytically, we can understand organisation at three levels. Highly interdependent, but analytically, something that we can separate and think about. And that is Christmas as a organising process. And this, here I mean in terms of its socio-political role, its socio-political efficaciousness, the way in which it engages people in particular forms of social relationships and establishes and sediments those in different ways. An economic or an organisational form, which I suppose really I refer to, as I say, the systematic accumulation of profit, the production, reproduction, distribution of economic resources, and finally the quotidian or the everyday aspect of organised Christmas. And I talk about biography. One of the things that when I started reflecting on this was my own experience as a child. Was the way that even then I was acutely aware of how organised personal Christmases had to be. Now that may have been part of my own domestic life. I had a working mother, a father who was, maintained a fairly traditional role in the household. But for my mother to cope with the demands of Christmas, of relatives, children, etc., the high level of organisation, personal organisation, and ordering that went into that, and the resources increasingly that have been provided in order to make that possible. So what I'm going to do really for the bulk of the rest of the presentation is just talk through these three levels. As I say, nobody's suggesting they're not interdependent. They are. They're mutually reinforcing, mutually constitutive of each other. But I just want to unpack them a little bit and really provide the bulk of what to talk about, I suppose. In doing so, there's also going to be a bit of history. If you know a lot about Christmas, I apologise. Because some of this may be familiar to you, some may be less so. But the first thing I'll talk about then is this idea that Christmas is an act or a process of socio-political organisation. Out of the three, I think this is probably the oldest tradition I want to talk about. Now, the history of Christmas is highly contested. Any version I give you is contested by somebody. There are different histories, different versions of Christmas. But there are some mutually agreed upon commonalities. The first one is that Christmas, or the setting of the date for the celebration of the Christ's birthday really does not emerge until about 300 years after his birth. And it's undertaken by the Emperor Constantine, the first Roman emperor who converted to Christianity. And my argument is that as an act of socio-political organising, that Constantine's setting of the birth date of Christ was itself an act of socio-political expediency. Effectively, at that point in time, there were a number of competing pagan festivals that all took place around the time of the midwinter solstice. We had the Saturnalia, which ran from, I'm going to get my dates here now right, from about the 17th to the 24th of December, which was the primary at the time festival for most people, a worship to the agricultural prowess of the god Saturn. A festival renowned in much later writing for debauchery, alcohol consumption, sexual liaisons. It's a bit like the modern office party, basically, so the template for that. You also have the Caelus, which is the New Year celebration that comes straight on after. I mean, these Romans really knew how to party. You hadn't already picked up on this run-up. And right in the middle of this, on December 25th, was, I can't do the Latin, and I did say everyone knows Jean Bartonet. She gave a paper, and she's a Catholic sister, and she couldn't do the Latin very well, so I didn't feel so bad about it. A festival, a day of celebration, in English translated as the birth of the unconquered sun, which is actually Dies Solis Invicti Nati. If anyone can do Latin, I apologise, but that's the best I could do. It's associated with the cult of Mithras. We won't go into that right now. What was important about this one in particular was, as a day of celebration, it involved lots of ritual, lots of secret ritual particularly, and was very popular with, unsurprisingly perhaps, military officers, senior politicians, and very wealthy individuals. So they were like the Freemasons of their day. Constantine wanted, in many ways,